And once again, I am live. Hello, my name is Rob. I'm from the channel Performance Check. And yeah, I wanted to hop on. I welcome you today to the House of the Unwell. I have suffered an injury. Not a really bad injury, but like quite a really bad, it is quite bad, a neck injury. It's pretty sore. And I was feeling a bit sorry for myself, so I thought, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna hop onto to the old ab tab, and I'm gonna cheer myself up by talking to this wonderful community about a topic that we all love talking about: villains. I always talk about villains, really, but I thought it is quite in keeping with what is fast becoming mine, and I think Lloyd's favourite question as well, which is, why aren't you more afraid? Hashtag WAYMA. Good lord, I can't even spell. So yeah, that's what I'm here to talk about today. But first of all, I wanted to begin by chatting to you guys about my next one shot that is up and coming. If you haven't seen, I put an interest post across most of the main groups of this community describing Shadow Under Lockdown. It is the next chapter in the Chronicles of the Nine Kingdoms, the series that I'm using to expand on the lore of the world presented in the Lawkeepers. And what I find to do with one shots that I find really interesting and fun to do is to pick a theme and to pick kind of like a genre almost to explore as well. So it's not just exploring a different setting or a different faction, but it's also exploring a different style of play. And this one is focusing on the Court of Whispers, which are a shadowy and slightly sinister organization that are masters of espionage, infiltration, theft, and assassination. And it's called Shadow Under Lockdown because essentially, arguably the greatest secret of the Nine Kingdoms is under threat. And what that secret is will be revealed in the game at some point, I'm sure. But essentially, that secret is in the mind of someone who is incarcerated in the most dangerous, vicious prison that I could come up with for my setting, called Castle Lock. There are two prisons in my setting so far. There's Castle Lock, and there's another one that I've been coming up with called the Arcane Asylum, which kind of speaks for itself. So yeah, in terms of actually, organizing the one shot, I wanted to post the concept up so people could see it, and I wanted to give it a bit of time. So I've decided I'm going to be picking players next week. Tomorrow I've got to head home for some family stuff, so I'm going to be concentrating on that. But when I get back next week, I will. That's when I'll be announcing players. And I'm really excited about it. I'm really excited about this one. It's going to be all kinds of nasty, I think. So I'm looking forward to it. I can see that a few people have joined. Matt Click has joined. Hey man, how's it going? Nathan Thurston, hey man, says, yay Rob, boo injuries. Yeah man, like, do you know, the really annoying thing is that I didn't do anything. Like, usually, like, if you have an injury, like, oh, I've sprained my ankle, I've done my leg in, like, and they're like, oh, how did you do that? Oh, I was skiing, or I was playing football, or, whatever. I walked into a room and I suddenly had like this massive shooting pain all down my like neck and like my upper back and between my shoulders and stuff. And I was like, oh my god. And that was the other day, and it's still really sore. So yeah, it sucks, man. Like, especially when there's literally from what I can tell, no reason for it to have happened whatsoever. So that was an interesting one. Tyler Hurst has joined. Hey man, how's it going? Hope I get to play. Looks super cool, dude. Yeah, I'm gonna be picking, but like, I'm gonna have to be in a game with you at some point, man, because it's got to happen. Locrius, oh my goodness me. The angelic blue wave of destruction and creativity is with us. It is Locrius. My man, he says. Good to see you, man. So, today, I want to talk about why aren't you more afraid of D&D villains? Like I say, it's fast becoming my favorite question to ask. Why aren't you more afraid? Because I find it funny. I find fear a really amusing thing in role-playing games, because it adds weight to anything that you're really involved in a role-playing game situation, really, doesn't it? Let's face it. Like, if your characters are fearful, they're going to act differently, and that generally means it generally means that works when you scare the players. And we were talking about this a bit, like in another stream that I did about why aren't you more afraid, where mechanically you can strike fear into your player's heart by, you know, leveling them with like 30 points of damage from a particularly vicious monster or enemy, which is all well and good. But when we talk about villains, it's an interesting thing. Now, not all villains have to be terrifying. You know, some villains can be snivelling and cowardly and have others to enforce their maniacal plans. But generally speaking, if you want a forceful, powerful villain, they have to have essentially a display of a show of force, to basically make your players realize that they're not, and you'll pardon my language, but not to be fucked with, essentially. Nathan says the room casts power word pain. Yeah, man. And man, power words. I love the power words, man. At least it wasn't power word kill. Wasn't there like power word kill, power word? I don't think there was a sleep. I don't know. Thinking about all those save all dies from 3.5. Tyler Hurst, definitely got to happen, my man. Keep an eye out. I'll be posting stuff again soon. Lack of Wi-Fi has caused me an inability to run again. Oh yes, I remember you saying that you're out of Wi-Fi, man. That's a pain in the ass. Like, I hope you're not using like too much data to watch this. If you're not using Wi-Fi, or maybe you just have a hard connection. I don't know. Yeah, man, that definitely has to happen. So anyway, back to villains. This is the question I'm going to ask you guys, and I'm going to do my best to talk about it for a little bit. So, how do you guys like to make your villains frightening? How do you show that display of force? Like, there are a variety of ways that you can do it, and I think I actually posted a picture of my. This is the reason I'm talking about this. Really, I posted a picture of my villain from the Lore Keepers, Equinox. I'm not like a great drawer or anything, but like if I can focus on something with the right idea in mind, I can generally, you know, scratch a basic image into paper, and I really like visualizing important NPCs in particular. And I've always had I always like to have a clear image in my mind of what my villain looks like. Like, I want them to be imposing. I want them to be memorable. I want them to have a presence. And it's thinking about those things that I can then sort of draw conclusions in my mind and decide what they're going to look like. And the same was true of Equinox. Now, in terms of showing why they're a threat, you've got to make the threat tangible. It has to be absolutely 100% certain that this is a dangerous individual for whatever reason. Now, it could be because of their own power. It could be because of the power that they wield in who they command. They themselves may not be stupidly powerful, like mechanically in a fight, but they could wield quite a lot of social power. For example, they can have quite a lot of. They can make sure that your reputation is besmirched. They can order other people to come after you and kill you. And I think if you want to tell a really good story, it's really awesome when your players invest in that fear too. If you show them, if you teach them to fear your villain, they will then in kind show you that in the game. They will sell it to you, essentially, which is great fun. I've got a few more comments here, so I'm going to have a quick sip of tea, actually. I should call this, like, tea time with Rob. Oh my god, my neck. I'm sat back, because if I'm sat back, then it doesn't hurt, but... Oh, lovely. But when I move forward, it hurts. That's better. Oh my goodness. So where was I? Locrius. Man, when Equinox showed up in the Lawkeepers, I just about crapped my pants. Yeah, well, like I say, a show of force. I won't go into the details too much. It is the first session of the Lawkeepers, so I wouldn't really call it spoiler territory too much. For those who don't know, Equinox is a cloaked individual, blood red cloak that wreaths this really strange, terrifying, archaic-looking mask. One half of it is white, one half of it is black. On the white side, there is no eye hole. There's only one eye hole, and from there gleams this terrifying yellow blazing light, which often erupts with force when he looks at people he wants to destroy, and in doing so he can disintegrate them with a glance. Now, it is not unknown to me that is pretty crazy. You know, we're talking about a game here. I mean, at the end of the day, you need your players and your player characters to have a chance against this thing. But if there's someone who can look at you and kill you, you're going to think twice about confronting them. The other thing I like about playing Equinox, I've only played him very, very briefly in the first session, is I have an idea of the presence that he has. You know, him walking into a room is an event, you know, like, it's got to be very cinematic and spectacular whenever he arrives. And I don't think he'll arrive anytime soon in the, I don't know, we'll see, but like, it's like I say, that show of force. Tyler Hurst, college Wi-Fi. Yeah, man, I'm with you there. I understand. John, oh no, see, you taught me how to say your name and now I've forgotten it. John Getz, was it Getz or Gertz? I'm so sorry. I will learn how to say your name correctly. But anyway, I was thinking of the end of Time Bandits, where Evil blasts all of his underlings in the room, turns and says, "I'm a reasonable man." Absolutely. Like, yeah, it is a that's a really great technique, actually. It is it is an absolute show of psychotic anger and power, which is then instantly followed up with a very reasonable, calm declaration. One offsets the other, and that is highly unsettling. To use another example, if you look to Star Wars The Force Awakens, there is a moment where Kylo Ren is told that the First Officer forces have failed to recover BB-8, I think it is. And he looks at this guy, and then he turns around, fires up that crazy ass lightsaber of his and just goes to town on a computer console. Absolutely goes to town on it. And then he turns around and then just says, calm as you like. Anything else? You know, like it's, okay, that's not for me. So yeah, definitely showing a that they're almost at ease with their own psychotic tendencies. I think that's a really neat trick to try. Tell me, guys, how do you like to use your villains to inspire fear? How do you portray them with majesty? David Matthew Huffman, hello all. Hey man, how's it going? Tyler Hurst. The first time my players in my online campaign met Dusk, my villain, they thought that Dusk was just a part of a prophecy, not a person. And when they first met him, it was just after he had a few. And when they first met him, it was just after he and a few others had slaughtered an entire town. He had demonstrated a bit of power and showed they were no. Oh, damn it. Like, I don't know why, but, like, if the comments are too long on my streams, I don't know why, but it just cuts it off. He demonstrated a bit of. Demonstrated a bit of power and showed they were no. I'm guessing no match. You're going to say they were no match for him. I think it's really important to show your players that they are no match for your villain. Like, I hate to keep going back to Star Wars, but like, if you think to Empire Strikes Back, the great thing about that is that the heroes lose. And in that confrontation between Luke and Vader, you know Luke isn't going to win. Well, obviously, now we all know. But I suppose thinking about it in terms of watching it, like, if you'd never seen Empire before, watching it for the first time, like as a kid when I was watching Empire, like, and I didn't know anything about what was going to happen, I was like, okay, Luke's kind of holding his own, but he's kind of having his ass kicked. And there's that bit where he knocks Vader off sort of like the edge of the carbonite chamber, and you think, oh, okay, yeah, he's okay, he's good, and then he just gets battered. That's a really wicked feeling, and it's a really cool way of just showing that, you know, you might be brave and you might have great abilities about you, but there is going to come a time when those abilities aren't going to be enough. And sometimes it takes a lot more than just being good in a fight to, you know, be the one that wins. Yeah, but then again, that's Star Wars, and we all go back to Star Wars, don't we? Well, I do anyway. Nathan Thurston, my players just met who they think is good. That's a good way to put it. Who they think, absolutely, who they think is the main villain of our campaign. After many sessions of hearing about Lug's tyranny. Oh, Lug! Yes, you've told me about Lug. I love the idea of Lug. For those who don't know, Nathan Thurston, I've described it kind of a little bit like Return to Forbidden Planet and The Tempest. Them being marooned in a situation, isn't it, Nathan? Marooned on an island or a planet with a tyrant. Really cool. So after many sessions of hearing about Lug's tyranny, they finally met him, and he jumped them. He took 2 friendly NPCs captive and blew up part of the player's crash ship. There you go. They've got to make an entrance. They have to also, like, it's been said quite a lot throughout this community about villains, they have to have goals that are always active. They always have to have drive and trajectory. They need to be doing something. They can't just, you know, just be there waiting for the players to show up when they're a high enough level, you know. So the fact that the villain there has taken the initiative and taken the fight to them, also like taking captives and things, like he has objectives, that's a really good thing to do. Lucris, Marquise is a master of making villains incredibly scary, partially because of his amazing descriptions and characterizations, and partially because he won't hesitate to kill your ass dead, lol. Absolutely, Lucris. Like, there is something to be said of, obviously Marquise is a very good role player. I've said to Marquise himself, he role plays like a beat poet. Like, he has a rhythm about how he delivers information and tells you things in a game, which I think is really unique and really cool. But you're quite right. He also has no hesitate. He will not hesitate in killing you. I believe he had a stream not too long ago, a couple of weeks back, about, don't be afraid to kill your players. And, it's a balance you've got to find. You obviously want your villains to be impactful, but if they're not going to be able to put their money where their mouth is and kill your players, then, you know, you're not going to you're not going to take them so seriously. You're not going to take any encounter seriously if you don't think there is a threat. So, despite how much, personally, I want to tell a good story, I always have to try and force myself to understand, and it isn't easy sometimes, but you have to force yourself to understand that without there being a threat, it's just not going to have the same impact. And I'm not going to say it's, I was about to say it's hardly worth playing if you're not going to die. But in a way it is, like, there needs to be a threat. Maybe not of death, but of consequence. So it's something to bear in mind. Nathan Thurston, why aren't you more afraid of tea time with Rob? Absolutely. Why aren't you more afraid? Oh my god. Oh, I keep forgetting. I sit down and I lean back and it's absolutely fine. But then when I sit forward, the pain re-emerges. Speaking of, I'll have a sip of tea. So, next comment. Nash Smith. Hey man, how's it going? Just rewatched the third season of BBC Sherlock. Excellent. I don't know whether you, Nash, I don't know where you're based. I don't know whether you will have seen it yet, but the first two episodes of Sherlock 4 are, I'm not going to talk about it because obviously it's new, so I don't want to spoil it, but that's what I've been watching. So cool that we're on the same wavelength with Sherlock. But anyway, just rewatched the third season of BBC Sherlock. And what you were saying reminds me of what the bad guy, Magnuson, just does whatever he wants whenever he wants. Like when he uses Sherlock's fireplace as a urinal. Disturbing shows of power or control. Absolutely. For those of you who don't know, yes, there is a villain who just walks into Sherlock Holmes's house. And because this guy's incredibly rich and incredibly prolific and he has like contacts everywhere, like he basically owns, like, I'm just going to cast my mind back. Like, I don't know what business he's in exactly, but he's a very powerful man. And he can basically just do what he wants. Like, he owns half of the police force. And yeah, he walks in, and whilst he's doing his villainous speech, he unzips, and he does a bit of a wee. He does a bit of a wee in Sherlock Holmes's fireplace. And it's like, that's really quite disturbing that you're doing that whilst, it's such grotesque base imagery backed with this eloquent, narcissistic speech that he gives, and it's really horrendous. I can't remember the actor's name, but I know his brother is Mads Mikkelsen, who people will know from Hannibal, Rogue One. Those pair are really great actors. I really admire those two. Tyler Hurst, all right, I've got to run to my next class. Dude, enjoy and learn well. Learn well, my friend. Chris Werham joined. Hey man, how's it going, dude? So David Matthew Huffman says, I like having the adventurers meet the minions first and make them enough of a threat to cause fear of their boss without even showing the main villain. I use brain drilling spiders to nearly kill a group. Then they ran screaming when they suspected the return of whoever was controlling them. Absolutely. Like, I think the DMG does like quite a good job of giving you some villainous archetypes. They're quite simple, but like, and I think the one that you're talking about there is, the figure in the shadow, the one who's pulling all the strings. Just the idea of the spiders and stuff just gave me that image as well, man. Yeah, I think it's a great thing to show the villainous and all-reaching hand of a villain to show that it doesn't matter where you go, there will be someone who is operating on that villain's behalf. And that in itself is terrifying, you know. And thinking to things like what Nash was saying about the Sherlock villain, money. Money can make people do lots of things, you know. For everyone has a price. So if you imagine that there's an NPC that has been working with the players for some time, and is probably a nice person, but if he's offered enough money, or if his family are threatened, that person that is closest to them can suddenly become a threat to them, just because of, you know, the shadowy villain's influence. That's something that is really cool to play with. Locris. Oh snap, gotta run. Later, y'all. See you later, man. Take it easy. So come on, guys, tell me more. How else do you like to scare people with your villains? Like we've talked about, obviously, a complete display of power, their own physical power. We've talked about influence, you know, getting other people to do their dirty work for them. What other ways are there? I'm just going to have a sip of tea. I think another really good way of doing it is to inspire fear, is to call the player's bluff a little bit. Like, it is generally assumed that most people in a setting or whatever are afraid of being killed, for example. But if you're able to portray a villain who has no fear of death or of mortal issues, then that itself can be a problem. Like if you're dealing with a psychopath, that's someone who doesn't think in the same ways as other individuals. I know that when I was chatting to Lloyd about this, and I think Lloyd has also mentioned on his stream, Yard the M, go check out his stuff. In fact, yes, I think it was on World Workshop we were talking about this. Go on to my channel, Performance Check, World Workshop. Me and Lloyd build a world together and talk about shit. It's cool. But Lloyd, I seem to remember Lloyd saying he really enjoys when a villain is only a villain because of a different perspective. If you imagine an alien-like race that perceives humanity as an insect, you know, you're just an insect to me. You are nothing. You are inconsequential. You know, anything that you do is futile. You know, when a creature isn't necessarily evil, but just doesn't even, you know, regard your existence as even worth considering, that's something that's scary on a whole nother level. It's realizing that no matter what you do to speak to this person, there's not going to be any reasoning with them, because they come from just a completely different background. Essentially, it's like you're cattle and you're trying to speak to them. That is scary. Chris Worm, I like to portray them as a dark mirror to one of the players. Similar backgrounds and situations, but goes a totally different, darker path. If done right, the players fear what they could be more than the villain himself or themselves. I completely agree, man. That's a great way to do it. And I think that's a really important point to make, is that the villain is going to could obviously cost them their lives, but it can cost them their lives in a different way, in the sense of not just outright killing them, but what sacrifices are you going to have to make to bring about the end of this villain? Like, what will you have to do? What part of you will you have to leave behind? And also, I mean, it's good to obviously, despite the fact that you want your villain to be scary, it can be scarier if they are relatable. If they are just another guy, or if you put in the words of the Joker, someone who had one bad day, you know, that's a very interesting way to look at it. And also, I mean, let's not, dismiss the more obvious, dark mirrorings. Look at Zelda, okay? The Legend of Zelda. In basically every game of Zelda that I can think of, you come across a Dark Link, who is like a shadow of yourself. It's always fun to go up against the evil version of yourself, because it just explores and it helps explores a facet of your player characters whilst talking about another character, which gives the other character exposition and it gives your players more development. So it just makes sense. John gets. Just gonna go gets, okay, and hopefully it's not as insulting as if I called you something else. So that is the realm of how I run Gods and Dragons. Do you prefer red ants or black ants? Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think because D&D has such a rich collection of different cultures, and like you say, dragons, gods, all different kinds of creatures, they all have different perspectives and they all have a different way of looking at things. And it's almost like a scale, it's almost like a graph, like you can imagine gods and dragons being quite high up, and the trivial pursuits of mortals being like sort of in the middle or whatever. And it's just something that doesn't compute to them. They're just sort of like, what what do you know of this world? You've been here what, like 30 years maybe? Sorry man, but you have no idea what this world is like. You cannot comprehend the ultimate mysteries of this universe. You are an insect. You are irrelevant. And to quote the Borg, resistance is futile. I'm just throwing a whole bunch of villains out there from popular culture in this stream. That's all I'm doing. But okay, there's another one, the Borg. Okay, you take the Borg from Star Trek. Like they just have a different ideology. Their purpose, they believe, is to make the universe a better place by assimilating everyone. You know, it's like the Cybermen in Doctor Who. They're the same. They feel that everyone should be like them. They should be upgraded. And if they can't upgrade them, then they delete them. You know, Daleks from Doctor Who, using some Doctor Who stuff here. Exterminate. They feel that basically anything that isn't a Dalek is pestilence. You know. They don't fight in wars. They just conduct pest control. It's that kind of perspective. It's a frightening perspective. Just gonna have a sip of tea. Oh my goodness, my neck. So I've got another comment. Jeff, and guys, if you have more examples, keep them coming. Let's keep chatting about this. I'm enjoying it. So Jeff Doty, or is it Doty? Oh man, I'm so bad with names. I'm so sorry if I'm offending everyone by getting your names wrong. Let's see. There we go. Nope. Nope. I'm sorry, I'm trying to open the comment and it's not. Okay, let's see if that works. Okay, there we go. Right, so if it makes sense in the game, I like to show hints and records of a villain's less villainous past and how they fell into evil and darkness. It makes them more relatable and sympathetic while still... Damn it, it won't open the comment. I'm sorry, Jeff, it won't let me open that. Let me try again. There we go. Sorry, let's try that again. So, if it makes sense in the game, I like to show hints and records of a villain's less villainous past and how they fell into evil and darkness. It makes them more relatable and sympathetic while still making players fear them when they see how far the person has fallen. Absolutely. To show your players the depths that you can sink in this world is a really intriguing and compelling story element to explore. Alexander Kostic. Hey man, how's it going? Hi Rob. The best villain, in my opinion, is Hannibal Lecter, performed by Sir Anthony Hopkins. Oh my goodness me. One of my all-time heroes. Anthony Hopkins is legendary. I live my life by a mantra that Anthony Hopkins spoke about in an interview I was actually lucky enough to watch live in the same room as this man. And he said, "Be bold, and mighty forces shall come to your aid." And that's advice that was given to him by Laurence Olivier. So take that away, guys. Be bold, and mighty forces will come to your aid. And think of that when you're running your games. You know, make bold decisions, and you will be supported. Anyway, sorry, Alexander. Let's start that again. I love Anthony Hopkins. He's great. So, hi Rob. The best villain, in my opinion, is Hannibal Lecter, performed by Sir Anthony Hopkins. He is just goddamn scary. His facial expressions, even while he's silent, is scary on its own, and each of his lines is just perfect. Absolutely. I mean, it's really good script, really good story, Silence of the Lambs. Shall I tell you the secret to that? I'm sure you probably know, but for those wondering, the secret to why Hannibal Lecter is as scary as he is in Silence of the Lambs, and I think he's scarier in Silence of the Lambs than he is in any other, because of this fact. He's in a cage. Okay? The scariest thing about Hannibal Lecter isn't that he eats people. It's that he can get into your head. He doesn't need to kill you himself. He can get you to kill yourself if he wanted. That's the thing. Such is his intelligence, and such is his, ironically, insight into humanity, that he can just, puppeteer you. The fact that he is standing behind glass means that you actually have the opportunity to look into those eyes and to speak with him. That is much scarier than him just being out and about loose. And a just really good idea. You know, if you want to do that in your games, amazing. Put your players in a situation where they aren't able to fight the villain isn't able to fight them, but they simply have a conversation. And I think that can be incredibly effective. We can talk about that more in a bit. I'm just going to read some more comments. Wim, hey man. So, how about an Inquisition? They don't hesitate. If you're evil in their mind, they kill you without hesitation or remorse. They just do their duty. They don't start monologuing before they kill you. They just kill you. Their conviction leads them. Not evil, but very terrifying. Yeah, absolutely. There is a order in my games called the Magisterium, and they have a sect that is known as the Witch Hunters. And the Witch Hunters essentially are an inquisitional force of the Nine Kingdoms, and they go about dispatching the rogue arcane and magical creatures because they have to be controlled and they have to be stopped. That's their opinion. Yeah, absolutely. And the thing that I think I've been exploring a lot with the Lawkeepers, to bring it back into the villains of my campaign, there are a lot of different villainous sects in the world. It's not a nice place. You have the Magisterium, you have Advent, which are sort of this strange fanatic cult that appears to have risen and grown in power without people fully realizing the full extent of it. And I think it's interesting to explore issues that affect our world today. I'm not trying to make a statement about the world whilst playing a game in D&D, but it is an interesting topic to explore in a story. And fanaticism is probably the most scary thing. The scariest thing is when someone believes they are right. And it doesn't matter if you speak to them. They don't need to talk to you because they don't want to talk to you. And if you did talk to them, then it wouldn't make any difference to how they feel and what they believe. That is scary. Alexander Kostic. Interesting thing I noticed after a couple of years is the way Charles Manson sees things. Okay. He has a philosophy of circles where if you don't let something in the circle, it can't get to you. This reminded me of Hannibal Lecter, who has the ability to penetrate these circles. Could Hannibal Lecter be, and I'm sorry, once again, the comment has been cut off, but I'm saying, could Hannibal Lecter be Charles Manson? I know the author of those books was actually a criminal psychologist or something to do with that. So it's no surprise that Hannibal Lecter shows those traits. Al, leaning forward, shows those traits well, shall we say, for want of a better word, in those films and books. And everyone knows they exist, so when they show up, everyone knows someone is going to die. Oh, with the Inquisition? Yeah, absolutely. Like, that's another thing that makes people frightening, makes villains frightening, when their reputation precedes them. It's what we were talking about earlier about their influence. When you know what they're capable of, and they haven't had to do anything, because their previous actions in different sessions or different campaigns have alerted the players to the fact that they are capable of this. Yeah. It's interesting with my own setting. Like I was saying, there are quite a lot of injustices present in the Nine Kingdoms. And it is that injustice that is seemingly seeping into Farwide now as well. And it's cool, like, I didn't do this deliberately, it was kind of an accident, but because of all these different factions that I have that portray their motivations in differing ways, it enables me to play with a lot of these different elements, like fanaticism for Advent and for the Magisterium, but also control of the state as well, like dystopian futures. Yeah. I think it's just good to have a really broad canvas, I guess, because you then are able to explore many, many different things. So I'm going to have a bit more tea, and if you guys have any questions, if you would like to make any more suggestions that we want to talk about, then go ahead. Otherwise, I will wrap this up, because I think this has been a pretty good conversation. I love that I just come online just to drink tea. It's hilarious. Okay, Alexander Kostic. A perfect, scary villain should have human traits in order to be truly terrifying. The scariest villain should remind us that we can do the same. The only difference is that the villain actually does it. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it is showing that anyone is capable of good and anyone is capable of evil. it's all very well and good, like having the fight against good and evil, but in stories and in role-playing games. But the reality is that if you actually are talking about like human beings, and I say human beings like the main humanoid races of D&D as well, like so elves and dwarves, you know, if you're talking like that and you want them to be fully rounded characters, I don't think it's possible for them to just be good. I don't think it's possible for anyone to just be good. Everyone has to strike a balance. And villains are just a great way of showing what happens when it shifts the other way. Alexander Cossins, I meant humanity. Yeah, man, absolutely. No, I'm with you. I'm totally with you. So yeah, this has been really cool. I've actually really enjoyed myself. Nash Smith says, no one thinks of themselves as the villain in their own story. Absolutely. Yeah, they think they're right. They think they're right. I mean, you can have like, and there is nothing wrong, I will say, there is nothing wrong with having the maniacal, over-the-top, pantomime-esque villain that twirls his mustache before escaping in his, airship. There's nothing wrong with that at all. That's good fun. But at the same time, even when it's good fun, it's nice to at least show motivation, even if they aren't scary, to show them why they are. Wim says, what about the Joker? Yeah, I was saying earlier in the stream, if you take the Killing Joke for an example, now Killing Joke isn't considered canon, but at the same time it kind of is. It's really weird. Like, the Joker doesn't really have a proper backstory. He has multiple conflicting backstories. The problem with the Joker is that he's just chaos incarnate. He is, anything can happen with him. Which is great because he is highly unpredictable. And one of Batman's greatest strengths is his ability to be a tactician, his ability to work something out. He is the world's greatest detective. How do you solve a crime that is so unpredictable that you can't tell what they're going to do next, So that's why Joker is amazing in Batman. Obviously, the Joker's amazing because it's Batman, and Batman is the best. So, Chris Wilhelm, Revan knew he was the villain. The villain the Star Wars universe needed. Absolutely. You bring up a great point. Revan is a fantastic example. Revan, for those of you who do not know, is a very, I'm going to be careful with what I say here, is a very important character in the Knights of the Old Republic series. And I believe later on the Old Republic as well. Didn't really play the Old Republic, not an MMO guy, but love the RPGs. And Revan has fought on both the side of the light and the side of the dark and somewhere in between. He has been both Jedi and Sith. He has seen every shade of the Force, and he knows them intimately. He is arguably the greatest Star Wars expanded universe character. And for those of you who haven't played Knights of the Old Republic, at least the first one, play it. My goodness. You can play it on your iPad and phone now. Actually, I don't know about phone, but you can definitely play it on your iPad. I saw it advertised. Great game. Great story. And absolutely, truly an unforgettable Star Wars experience. So that's me plugging old Knights of the Old Republic for you guys who if you haven't had the pleasure. Yeah, Revan's great. And Revan is great because he has those perspectives. Like, he knows and understands a lot of different ways of looking at the galaxy as a whole and through the Force. Yeah, you know what, guys? I think I'm going to leave it there. But so to recap, Ah, damn! I was just about to recap, and then I got another comment. I'll talk about this one. Alexander Kostic. I was filling my pants when I was a kid after watching Dune. Yes, Baron Vladimir Harkonnen haunted me for months. Haunted everyone for months, man. It's just the way it is. Yeah, good example. But anyway, as I was saying, it's been great talking to you guys. So to reiterate what I was talking about before, with my one shot, I will be saying, I will be choosing my players next week once I've dealt with my family stuff that I've got to do, going back home and stuff. And for those of you watching later, I'll be putting this onto the YouTube. Maybe give me a like, maybe give me a subscribe, or not. We're all friends here, or are we? That is what I always say for some reason. Haven't quite worked out why. Yeah, and if you have any thoughts on how to make your villains scary, how to make your villains impactful and well-rounded, then hit it up in the comments below. It'll be awesome. Check out the Performance Check Facebook page, and if you are intrigued by Equinox, the villain I was talking about before, go check out the Lore Keepers on YouTube. Chapter 4 is on its way to being scheduled, so it will not be long before we rejoin our heroes there. Anyway, for the time being, thank you ever so much for providing me a distraction from my critical injury, for I was criticaled upon by my own body by walking into a room. Weird. Thanks for dropping by, and I hope that all of your performances are up to standard.